Imagine you work at BASF's Ludwigshafen plant, the largest chemical complex in the world, the birthplace of the Verbund concept, a cathedral of German engineering where 175 production facilities create everything from vitamins to car paint to pesticides, all interconnected in a symphony of industrial efficiency that has run for 159 years since 1865. And one morning in September 2024, your CEO Marcus Kamieth walks into a meeting with 200 executives and announces that 1 in 7 facilities at Ludwigshafen will close, that the plant contributed only 4% to group earnings despite being 35% of BASF's global footprint, that you've been operating at 61% capacity because German energy costs 5 to 6 times more than in the United States, that BASF is investing $10 billion in a new mega plant in Zhangjiang, China that will be the third largest Verbund site after Ludwigshafen and Antwerp, and that the former CEO Martin Brudermüller literally said at his last press conference that highly motivated Chinese employees work from early morning until late evening, while in Germany everyone is calling for 4-day work weeks. Imagine watching your company, the world's largest chemical producer, a symbol of German industrial might, announced 2,600 job cuts in Ludwigshafen while simultaneously pouring billions into China, and you realize this isn't just BASF, this is happening everywhere. Volkswagen is closing plants in Germany for the first time in its 87-year history. Bosch is cutting 7,000 jobs. ThyssenKrupp is shutting steel facilities. BMW is shifting production to China and Mexico, and in just 2024 alone, Germany lost 120,000 manufacturing jobs, bringing the total down to 6.67 million workers, the lowest in decades, and GDP contracted 0.3% in 2023 and another 0.2% in 2024, marking 2 consecutive years of recession, which hasn't happened since the 1970s oil crisis. Germany, the economic engine of Europe, the industrial powerhouse that rebuilt itself from the ruins of World War II, the country that gave the world the Autobahn and Mercedes-Benz and the Mittelstand, is now being called the sick man of Europe for the first time since the reunification crisis of the 1990s, and this collapse happened so fast, so dramatically that the world is watching in shock, asking, how did this happen? How did Europe's strongest economy destroy itself in just 3 years? And the answer is a perfect storm of energy, suicide, ideological obsession, and the most catastrophic industrial policy decision in modern European history. But let me take you back to where it all went wrong, back to March 11th, 2011, when a magnitude 9.0 earthquake struck off the coast of Japan, triggering a tsunami that hit the Fukushima Daiichi nuclear power plant, causing reactor meltdowns and forcing the evacuation of over 150,000 people. And while the rest of the world looked at Fukushima and said this was a once-in-a-century natural disaster at a coastal plant built in 1971, without modern safety systems, Germany looked at Fukushima and panicked. Angela Merkel, a trained physicist who had previously been a strong advocate for nuclear power, immediately reversed her position, and within 3 months, on June 6, 2011, the German parliament voted to phase out all nuclear energy by 2022, shutting down 8 reactors immediately and scheduling the remaining 9 for closure over the following decade. And this wasn't just any decision, this was Germany betting its entire industrial future on a green energy transition called Energiewende that had already cost over $500 billion since 2000. They closed perfectly functioning nuclear plants that provided clean baseload power and replaced them with wind and solar that only work when nature cooperates, but wind doesn't blow and sun doesn't shine on demand, so Germany became dependent on natural gas to fill the gaps. And where did that gas come from? Russia. By 2020, Germany was importing 55% of its natural gas from Russia through pipelines like Nord Stream 1, and despite warnings from the United States, from Poland, from the Baltic states, Germany went ahead and built Nord Stream 2, spending $11 billion on a pipeline that would double their dependence on Russian gas. They finished construction in September 2021, and then Russia invaded Ukraine on February 24, 2022, and everything collapsed. Russia started weaponizing gas supplies, cutting deliveries through Nord Stream 1, and by September 2022, both Nord Stream pipelines were sabotaged and destroyed in underwater explosions that remain officially unexplained but widely attributed to either Russian or Western covert operations. And suddenly Germany, the industrial heart of Europe, had no cheap Russian gas and no nuclear power to fall back on. Gas prices exploded. European TTF natural gas futures went from $20 per megawatt hour in early 2021 to over $300 in August 2022, a 15-fold increase, and German electricity prices for industrial consumers shot up from around $50 per MWh to peaks above $500, while in the United States, where they have abundant shale gas and kept their nuclear plants running, industrial electricity costs remained around $60, $80 per MWh. Germany's energy costs were suddenly 4 to 5 times higher than its competitors, and for energy-intensive industries like chemicals, steel, aluminum, glass, and automotive manufacturing, this was a death sentence. BASF's natural gas costs in Deindustrialization, the first 9 months of 2022 were $2.2 billion higher than the previous year. They were literally bleeding billions because the German government's ideological commitment to Energiewende had made industrial production uncompetitive. And here's the truly insane part. On April 15, 2023, while the energy crisis was still raging, Germany shut down its last 3 nuclear reactors, Emsland Isar 2 and Neckar-Westheim 2, ending nuclear power in Germany forever. These were perfectly functional plants that could have been run for another 20 years. They were providing 6% of Germany's electricity, with zero carbon emissions, but the Green Party and the coalition government refused any extension. Economy Minister Robert Habeck from the Greens celebrated the shutdown as a historic achievement. And what happened next is exactly what everyone except German politicians predicted. Germany became a net electricity importer for the first time since 2002, importing 23 terawatt-hours in 2023 compared to 21 TWh of exports the previous year. And where was that electricity coming from? France, with its 56 nuclear reactors providing 72% of its electricity mix, the highest percentage in the world. France, which kept its nuclear fleet running while Germany shut theirs down. And French household electricity prices in late 2023 were $0.02 per kilowatt, while German households paid $0 per kilowatt, the highest in the entire European Union. Germany was literally buying nuclear electricity from France at premium prices after shutting down their own nuclear plants for ideological reasons. The irony was so thick you could cut it with a knife, and German industry was dying. In 2023, BASF made no profit in Germany for the first time anyone could remember. The Ludwigshafen plant that had been profitable for 158 consecutive years was losing money, and CEO Martin Brudermüller stood up in February 2024 and announced they were cutting another 800 jobs in Ludwigshafen and 800 more across Germany, on top of the 2,600 already announced in 2023, and he said explicitly, if BASF were to replicate its global production facilities today, 35% of total investment would need to be allocated to Ludwigshafen to maintain its current form. Despite its size, the main plant contributed only 4% to group earnings in the first half of 2024. He was saying out loud what everyone knew: Germany had become too expensive to manufacture anything, and BASF's solution was to build a second Ludwigshafen in Zhanjiang, China, with $10 billion in investment that would become the third largest Verbund site after Ludwigshafen and Antwerp, Belgium. And this wasn't just BASF. Volkswagen announced in October 2024 that it was closing at least 3 plants in Germany and cutting 35,000 jobs, 1 in 4 positions in Germany, including 15,000 in Wolfsburg alone, plus wage cuts of 10% and a 2-year wage freeze for everyone who kept their jobs. This was the first time in Volkswagen's 87-year history that they were shutting down factories on German soil. 87 years. Through 2 world wars, through reunification, through every crisis imaginable. But now in 2024, they couldn't afford to build cars in their home country anymore. Why? Because Chinese EV manufacturers like BYD were selling electric cars at prices VW couldn't match even if they wanted to. BYD's Seagull EV sells for $10,000 in China, while VW's cheapest EV starts at $40,000. And even with EU tariffs up to 37.6% on Chinese EVs, they were still cheaper. BYD saw 252% sales growth in Europe in 2024, while Tesla registrations in Germany fell 55% in July 2025. VW was being destroyed in its own backyard. and they were responding by closing German factories and moving production to China. VW invested $2.5 billion in Hefei, expanding EV production in China, and another $700 million in a technology partnership with Chinese startup Xpeng. They increased their stake in Jack Motor from 50% to 75%. BMW built a massive plant in Shenyang. Mercedes was expanding in China. They were all doing the same thing, keeping some token production in Germany for political reasons while moving everything they could to lower-cost countries. And it wasn't just automotive, it was everything. Bosch was cutting 7,000 jobs in Germany while expanding in China's e-mobility sector. Schaeffler was closing plants. ZF Friedrichshafen was shutting facilities. Continental was laying off thousands. Magna was cutting staff. ThyssenKrupp was collapsing under the weight of uncompetitive steel production. Across all of Europe's automotive companies and suppliers, hardly a week went by in late 2024 without new announcements of plant closures and job cuts. Ford closed its factory in Saarlouis, where 7,000 people used to work. Now it's down to a skeleton crew of 1,000 dismantling the equipment. Ford's Cologne plant with 11,000 employees is on the brink. An ARD documentary revealed secret closure plans. Car production in Italy has collapsed. Unemployment is soaring in Austria's supply chain. And here are the numbers that tell the real story. In 2024, chemical production in Germany fell for the third consecutive year and is now 20% lower than before the pandemic. Manufacturing output dropped 4.5%. GDP growth is forecasted at just 0.2% for 2025. After 2 years of contraction, youth unemployment in manufacturing regions is climbing. The trade surplus that Germany relied on for decades is shrinking as exports become uncompetitive, and 52% of German industrial companies say they're considering moving production abroad, according to DIHK surveys. This is deindustrialization in real time, the systematic dismantling of Europe's industrial core, and real people are suffering. Meet Klaus, 54 years old, worked at BASF Ludwigshafen for 28 years as a chemical engineer, started as an apprentice, worked his way up to senior process engineer, earned $85,000 a year, had a house in Mannheim, 2 kids in university, and in September 2024, he got the letter. His division is being shut down, his job eliminated. His options are take a severance package of $60,000 or relocate to the new plant in Zhanjiang, China, if they'll even take him. At 54, he's too old to relocate and too young to retire. He takes the severance and starts looking for work, but there are no jobs. Every chemical company in Germany is cutting, not hiring. He ends up taking a job as a technical consultant for $45,000 a year, half his previous salary. He can't afford the house anymore. His kids might have to drop out of university. This is the German dream dying. Meet Sarah, 29, recent mechanical engineering graduate from RWTH Aachen, one of Europe's best engineering schools. She spent 5 years getting her degree with top marks. She wanted to work for BMW or Bosch designing the future of automotive technology. She applied to 47 positions across German industry, got 2 interviews, 0 job offers, because nobody is hiring junior engineers in Germany. The jobs are in China or the United States. She can't get a work visa for the US and she doesn't speak Mandarin. She's working at a consulting firm in Frankfurt making $42,000 analyzing PowerPoint slides instead of designing engines. Her student debt is $35,000. She's thinking about emigrating to Switzerland or the Netherlands. Germany is losing an entire generation of engineering talent because there are no jobs for them to do the work they trained for. The factories are closing, the plants are moving abroad, the industrial base is evaporating. And meet Jürgen, 47, worked at Volkswagen's Wolfsburg plant for 23 years on the assembly line, currently makes $3,800 per month after taxes, union negotiated, good benefits, pension plan. He just heard that his plant is one of the 3 being shut down. 15,000 workers in Wolfsburg will be laid off. His entire department is gone. At 47, with only a Realschule education, his options are grim. Retraining programs exist, but for what? There are no other automotive plants hiring. Retail jobs pay $2,000 a month. He has a mortgage, 2 teenagers, and now he's facing the real possibility that he'll never work in manufacturing again, that his entire career, his entire skill set, everything he knows how to do is obsolete, not because he's bad at his job, but because Germany made its industrial sector too expensive to exist, and the government's response has been pathetic. The Ampel coalition, SPD Social Democrats, Greens, and FDP Free Democrats, that governed from 2021 to 2024, spent more time fighting each other than addressing the crisis. They imposed a Schuldenbremse debt brake that prevented borrowing for infrastructure investment. Even though Germany's roads, bridges, rail networks, and digital infrastructure are falling apart with an estimated $500 billion maintenance backlog, they maintain the commitment to Energiewende even as it became clear that renewable energy couldn't provide stable baseload power for industry. They refused to reverse the nuclear shutdown even during the worst energy crisis in German history. Economy Minister Robert Habeck from the Greens literally flew to Qatar in March 2022, begging for LNG contracts to replace Russian gas instead of just keeping the nuclear plants running. And when Finance Minister Christian Lindner from the FDP said in November 2024 that Germany needed to pause climate spending and focus on economic competitiveness, Chancellor Olaf Scholz fired him, triggering the collapse of the entire government. Snap elections were called for February 23, 2025. Friedrich Merz from the CDU is likely to win, but by then it might be too late. German industry isn't waiting for the next election. They're leaving now. BASF's Zhangjiang plant will be operational in 2030. VW's Chinese expansion is happening now. Every month of delay is another month of competitive disadvantage, another month of lost market share, another month closer to irreversible decline. And here's what makes this even more tragic. It didn't have to be this way. Look at France. They kept their nuclear fleet running, 56 reactors providing 72% of electricity. Yes, they had some maintenance issues in 2022-2023 when several reactors went offline for repairs, but they fixed them and came back strong. French electricity prices are 37% lower than Germany's. French industrial production is stable. French companies aren't fleeing the country. President Emmanuel Macron announced in February 2022 a plan to build 6 new EPR nuclear reactors by 2035, with possibly 8 more by 2050. France is doubling down on nuclear while Germany abandoned it, and French industry is competitive. Look at the United States. They not only kept their nuclear plants running, but they're building new ones. Plus, they have abundant cheap natural gas from shale that Germany called environmentally irresponsible. U.S. industrial electricity costs are 1/5 of Germany's. U.S. chemical production is booming. U.S. automotive manufacturing is attracting billions in new investment under the Inflation Reduction Act. Meanwhile, Germany is hemorrhaging industry, and now German companies are literally telling the German government that they're moving to the United States, not China, to America. BASF is expanding its U.S. operations. Auto suppliers are opening plants in Mexico and the southern United States. Even wind turbine manufacturers are relocating because the U.S. market is bigger and costs are lower. Germany spent $500 billion in Energiewende trying to be the world leader in green energy, and all they accomplished was making their own industry uncompetitive. And the irony is that Germany's CO2 emissions haven't even fallen as much as they should have because they replaced nuclear power with coal. Yes, coal. In 2023, coal still provided 31% of Germany's electricity compared to France, where coal was basically eliminated. Germany shut down zero-carbon nuclear plants and replaced them with coal plants that pump out CO2. They spent €500 billion to increase emissions and destroy their industrial base. It's the worst policy outcome in modern economic history, and you can see the desperation now in late 2024 and 2025. German politicians are finally starting to panic. The new government, if Merz wins, is talking about reversing some green policies, maybe extending the lifespan of coal plants, maybe reconsidering the nuclear ban, though the plants are already being decommissioned, so it's probably too late. Maybe investing in infrastructure, maybe cutting regulations, but it's all too little too late. BASF isn't going to cancel their $10 billion Chinese plant because Germany promises to maybe possibly consider making energy cheaper in 5 years. VW isn't going to reverse factory closures because a politician makes a speech. Once industrial capacity moves abroad, it rarely comes back. Once you shut down a plant and lay off the workers, the institutional knowledge disappears, the supply chains reconfigure, the customers move on. You can't just flip a switch and bring it back. Deindustrialization is like entropy. It's easy to destroy industry in nearly Impossible to rebuild it, and Germany is watching in real time as the industrial base that made it the economic powerhouse of Europe crumbles away, manufacturing employment falling, GDP stagnant, exports declining, and the worst part is that Germans voted for this. Polls showed that 60–70% of Germans supported the nuclear phase-out even after the energy crisis hit, even after industry started leaving. The Green Party, which pushed hardest for Energiewende, won 14.8% of the vote in 2021, making them the third largest party in the Bundestag. Germans chose ideology over pragmatism, values, over economics, and now they're paying the price. Young engineers can't find jobs, factory workers are being laid off by the tens of thousands, entire industrial towns are facing economic devastation, and the timeline of decline is accelerating. 2022 was the energy shock, 2023 was the first year of contraction, 2024 was mass layoffs, 2025 looks like it will be the year of factory closures, and by 2030, if current trends continue, Germany might not be an industrial economy anymore. It will be a service economy like Britain after Thatcher, and we all know how that turned out for British. Manufacturing gone, utterly destroyed, and while Germany deindustrializes, China industrializes. Chinese companies are buying German technology firms, Chinese EVs are flooding European markets, Chinese chemical plants are producing what BASF used to make in Ludwigshafen. The industrial capacity isn't disappearing, it's relocating from Germany to China, from the west to the east, and future historians will look back at the 2020s as the decade when Europe's industrial dominance ended, not because of war or natural disaster, but because of a series of unforced policy errors so catastrophic that they destroyed the economic foundation of the continent's largest economy in less than a decade. They will study how Germany had everything: engineering expertise, capital, infrastructure, a skilled workforce, strong institutions, and threw it all away chasing a green utopia that didn't account for basic physics and economics, how they shut down reliable nuclear power during an energy crisis, how they made themselves dependent on an adversarial foreign power for energy and then acted shocked when that power weaponized it, how they imposed costs on their own industry that made competitions impossible and then wondered why factories were closing. And the tragedy is that ordinary Germans are suffering while the politicians who made these decisions face no consequences. Klaus lost his career, Sarah can't find work in her field, Jürgen's factory is shutting down, but Angela Merkel retired comfortable. Robert Habeck will move on to his next political position. The bureaucrats who designed Energiewende won't miss a day's pay. It's always the workers who pay for elite policy failures, always the ordinary people who bear the cost when ideologues prioritize symbolism over reality, and Germany in 2025 is paying that cost, watching its factories close, its workers laid off, its industrial base dissolve, becoming the sick man of Europe not through any external shock but through self-inflicted wounds, through choices that prioritized feeling good over doing good, appearing green over staying competitive, and now as the bill comes due, as BASF builds its future in China and Volkswagen shutters German plants for the first time in 87 years, Germany is left asking itself whether the cost was worth it. The alternative history. What if Germany had chosen differently? But imagine a different timeline. Imagine that on March 12, 2011, the day after Fukushima, Chancellor Angela Merkel, the trained physicist, looks at the data. Instead of the panic, she sees that this was a 40-year-old coastal plant hit by the fourth largest earthquake in recorded history, followed by a tsunami. She sees that modern German nuclear plants built inland with updated safety systems face no comparable risk. She sees that Germany's 17 reactors provide 33% of electricity with zero carbon emissions and stable baseload, power that renewables cannot replace, and instead of shutting down 8 reactors immediately, she announces that Germany will continue its nuclear program while investing heavily in renewable energy. As a complement, not a replacement, she says Germany will run its nuclear plants for their full technical lifespan of 60–80 years while building out wind and solar to reduce coal consumption. She resists the Green Party hysteria and makes the pragmatic choice, and what happens in this timeline, Germany in 2020 still has all 17 nuclear reactors running, providing 30–35% of electricity. They've also massively expanded wind and solar, which now provides another 40%. Coal has been reduced to 15% from the previous 40%. Natural gas provides the remaining 15%, mostly for peaking and backup. Germany is getting 75% of its electricity from zero-carbon sources. Their emissions are falling faster than any other major economy, and when Russia invades Ukraine on February 24, 2022, and gas prices explode, Germany barely notices. Yes, gas gets expensive, but it's only 15% of their power mix. They have nuclear providing stable baseload and renewables when available. German industrial electricity prices spike from $50 to $100 per MWh instead of to $500. This is manageable. BASF's gas costs increase by $500 million instead of $2.2 billion. They remain profitable in Germany. They keep Ludwigshafen running at full capacity. They don't need to build the Zhangjiang megaplant. The $10 billion stays in Germany. Volkswagen faces challenges from Chinese EV competition, but they're not simultaneously dealing with energy costs 5 times higher than competitors. They can compete on technology and quality without the energy handicap. They don't need to close German factories because manufacturing in Germany is still cost competitive. The 35,000 job cuts never happen. Klaus keeps his engineering job at BASF. Sarah gets hired by BMW to work on next-generation electric drivetrains. Jürgen's assembly line keeps running. German GDP grows at 2 to 3% annually through 2024 instead of contracting. Manufacturing employment is stable or growing. Exports remain strong. Germany is still the economic engine of Europe, not the sick man. And here's the beautiful part. Germany is also hitting its climate targets faster than the real timeline because nuclear plus renewables is replacing coal and gas. In the real timeline, Germany shut down nuclear and kept coal running at 31% of the mix. They increased emissions in the name of climate policy. In this alternative timeline, nuclear plus renewables has reduced coal to 10% or less. Emissions are down 60% from 1990 levels instead of 45%. Germany is the climate leader it always wanted to be, and the industrial powerhouse it always was. They didn't have to choose between green energy and economic competitiveness because nuclear gave them both. France proved this model works. They have cheap, clean electricity and strong industry. The alternative Germany could have had that too, and by 2030 in this timeline, Germany has 17 nuclear plants running, 60% renewable energy, 5% coal being phased out, the lowest electricity prices in Europe, thriving industrial production, BASF expanding in Ludwigshafen, VW competitive with Chinese EVs, young engineers staying in Germany to build the future instead of emigrating, and the entire European Union benefits because Germany's industrial strength lifts the whole continent. German chemical exports supply European manufacturers. German automotive innovation drives the EV transition. German engineering expertise develops next-generation technologies. The alternative Germany is still the Germany of precision engineering and industrial excellence, and the lesson for everyone watching is clear. Ideology kills economies, pragmatism builds them. When you make energy policy based on emotions instead of physics, you get Germany's real timeline. When you make it based on data, you get the alternative. And the tragedy is that Germany had the choice. In 2011, they could have kept the nuclear plants running. In 2014, they could have reversed course on Nord Stream 2. In 2022, they could have delayed the nuclear shutdown during the energy crisis. At every step, they chose symbolism over substance and paid the price in shuttered factories and lost jobs. But it didn't have to be this way. The alternative Germany, thriving with nuclear plus renewables, is not science fiction. It's what France did, what South Korea did, what Ontario, Canada did. It's what Germany could have done if they had chosen pragmatism over panic. And maybe if German voters look at the ruins of their industrial sector in 2025 and ask themselves how it happened, maybe they'll remember that the choice was theirs, that the policies were popular, that the politicians who destroyed German industry were elected and re-elected by Germans who prioritized feeling environmentally pure over staying economically viable. And maybe the lesson will sink in before it's too late, but probably not, because the nuclear plants are already being decommissioned. The industrial capacity has already moved to China. The workers have already been laid off. The alternative timeline is closed. Germany made its choice, and now Germany lives with the consequences.